Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our continued coverage of the World Cup 2021. The last time that we sat down here to record some content, we were coming off of some awesome games, and we were coming off of the news that my house had been broken into. Now, well, one of those things continues to go on like normal, which is the World Cup. The other thing, which it doesn't continue to go on like normal, is house break-ins. But we are figuring certain things out, and soon we will probably have a slightly different background. And yeah, more news to come with that. But let's take a look at some games, shall we? Magnus Carlsen and Radoslav Wojtaszek drew their first game. It was very complex, and it's interesting to see what Magnus brings to the table in terms of classical chess ideas. And this game, we didn't have to wait very long. We have a bishop b5 Czech Sicilian defense. Black plays knight d7, which is a very confrontational move. It doesn't look like it, but black wants to go here and force a trade of bishop for knight. Oftentimes, this will be accompanied with white either playing c3, d4, d4 right away and taking with the queen, c4 to trade off the light-squared bishop and then have the light-squared pawns in the center. Or what Magnus does in this game, which is combine two of the ideas and get a position that, like, this position has been reached maybe 3,000 times, with this move having been played 2,700 of those times. This is like 200 moves. But they kind of get back to familiar territory. We get a structure that is pretty well known, and black is not taking on e4 because black doesn't want to get slaughtered on the e-file. Black ends up not being able to capture anymore, and we have the following position. You see, combining a few different ideas, e4, c4, although this bishop actually hasn't taken the knight. So normally white takes the bishop for the knight or for the bishop and just creates a space advantage in the center of the board. But the way that this happens after queen c7, and black puts a little bit of pressure on this pawn, maybe knight b6, knight a4, knight c4, or knight c5, hitting both of these. There's really interesting dynamic play and opportunities kind of coming in here. But by the way, Magnus has had this game with black versus none other than myself. No, just kidding. Hikaru Nakamura in the FTX Crypto Cup. And in that game, white put the bishop on b3, lined it up over here, and they had a very complex game. I don't remember who won, but it was very complex. And so Magnus, interestingly enough, now takes the white side and plays this move. So white just takes a lot of space with pawns and ends up moving this bishop exactly back to b3. Now, it's ugly. That is a very ugly spot for a bishop. However, white has a big space advantage. It is not easy for black to make typical breaks like d5. So instead, had a stiff neck there for a second. Black plays e5. e5 is a good and a bad move, just like most of chess. I mean, the good thing is that you open up your pieces, you fight for the center a little bit, right? You can have the opportunity to open up your position even more. The drawback of e5 is now you've given white access with this knight, and you basically have to do this because that knight is just way too strong. Now, if white ever successfully plays c5 and activates this bishop, your position will be very bad. And hidden in this position is a very dangerous plan for white. Now, you would think it's like a hotbed over here because that's where everything is kind of standing. This bishop might come out, maybe rook d1. No, now, you can play for that side of the board with fe5, de5, and something like bishop to g5. The idea being that, just very raw idea, you want to take this, and you want to control the center light squares. So you want to play like knight e4, you want to push for this and open up this bishop because your bishop will be really strong. But Magnus plays this move and then takes back in the center with the bishop. Is just very clear what he wants. He wants to go g5, he wants to go g6. And one thing that Magnus does in a move is he just gives away the c4 pawn. And I don't know if Wojtaszek was like, okay, I mean, if he gives me the pawn, I'm just going to take. I'm a pawn up. Like, why? I would never hesitate here. You've reactivated your opponent's bishop. You understand? Like, you get the pawn, but now the bishop can't move. This is way too dangerous, and now Wojtaszek is under serious pressure. The knight comes out to h5. The knight immediately takes the center, because this knight was the only thing covering it. And queen c5, the king slides over. Queen c5 was check, of course. And now Wojtaszek again plays a move that is just begging for obliteration. The move b5. That move does something. It stabilizes this knight and makes it possible to move the queen. But it's so slow. It does nothing regarding my attack. So Magnus just continues forward with g6. Wojtaszek is completely lost here, but it's still a game of chess. There's no like immediate knockout blow. lurking in these positions that are very tactical when an attack is coming. Lurking is kind of the tactical knockout. Here, the computer recommends a couple of things, at least maybe bringing a rook to the party. But a move that it really likes is the move knight a5. Attacking the bishop and trying to just get rid of it. Now, this doesn't by any means solve the problems, because you still have to deal with this, where the computer likes to trade on f4 and then just take this pawn. And basically just be like, yeah, I'm just going to take the pawn. What are you going to do? You can laser beam me with all your pieces, but you have no attack because your g-pawn lost the helper. Not very human. I can't really blame Wojciech for not playing this. And by the way, when I tell you the computer said it, I'm just trying to tell you how difficult the position is to navigate. I'm not trying to sit here like, well, I would have found this. Yeah, if you gave me a phone and let me go to the bathroom, yes, maybe I would have found it. But Magnus is just belligerently moving forward. I mean, the rook is the final piece to join the attack, stabilizing the knight in the center. You might ask, why didn't he do this and lure the king out? Also very reasonable. He could have just went straight for the kill here with f6. This is how I would have played the position. Listen, I'm not a very, I'm not a suave and sophisticated, like me give checkmate, me attack and force king to move, me push pawn, me try to open up f-file. I would still need to win this position because the king is covered, but I'm just saying, like, I like this. This looks really good. I'm not really worried about losing this pawn. Magnus is a sophisticated man. He, slowly pries away the defense of black's position. He rotates the rook over to h4. I mean, the pressure here is building. He's not taking anything. He's making Wojciech make the moves. And there's a move here where you can take the knight with the queen, and if rook takes d5, there is, of course, rook e1 check, which is an oopsie, but still white is doing fine because you would just win the rook and you're an exchange up. Wojciech plays a move here which sends the game from plus 1.9 to plus the game. Literally, it says the game. It's plus 10. And you will notice that Magnus Carlsen's last move was rook h4. So naturally, his next move after rook takes f5 would have been rook takes h7, creating the threat of rook h8 check, king h8, queen h3 check, and queen to h7 mate. That's what he would have done. And for example, if pawn takes, then queen takes, and I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, no one's gonna survive this. If rook takes d5, for example, I don't know, move the rook, and your threats are unstoppable. You are just threatening too much stuff here. For example, let's say rook comes to g5 attacking your queen. You have check here, and it's just mate very soon. For example, here, you have rook f6, gf6, queen h7. Yes, you have to kind of see that from like this point forward, but it's Magnus, and he has a lot of time. So, but Magnus here plays this move, and now we go from plus 10 to back down to plus 1.5. Queen f2. Uh-oh, we're gonna get a trade? What is my air conditioner doing? Go away. Here, and the king is safe, and all of a sudden, even though Magnus has a very nice position, the queen is back. Let me just instant replay that for you, okay? So we went from a position where it's borderline mate to Magnus allowing the queen to danger level him. If bishop takes f5 were to be played, then queen h4, king is completely safe here. In fact, black is better because you're gonna play g6, you have this in the future if this knight ever moves. And yeah, they end up just drawing the game a few moves later by virtue of a repetition. Magnus gives away the piece, and they repeat moves. So, wow. We're not used to seeing that very often. We expect perfection, Mr. Carlsen. But these two will decide this in the tiebreaks. The second game that I'd like to show you is the game between Pavel Pankratov and Etienne Bacro. Etienne defeated Pavel in their first game. He had the white pieces. Etienne had the white pieces. Pankratov had the black pieces in that game. Is that what I said? Did I say that right? Anyway, Pankratov has to win, and Etienne Bacro has to not lose this game. That's it. So, of course, you play the most confrontational defense possible, and you play something known as the Rouser. You allow the Richter? How would you say that? Germans, help me out. I've already embarrassed. Richter Rouser. I'm gonna say it like an American. Long castle. I mean, this is like a super garbage way to play if you need to not lose. Maybe you play a super theoretical Sicilian because you're like, it'll be a draw if we just play a lot of theory. But you are like inviting your opponent to a position where they will castle long. It'll be a bloodbath. I mean, you're not even going to castle in a lot of variations in the classical Sicilian. The king stays by. I'm just saying, like, if the guy wanted to play for a draw, play the Petrov. Oh, sorry, that's the French. I mouse slip. I know my openings. Like, play the, I don't know. Look, I'm no one's coach. Etienne back row is far better of a player than I could ever even like imagine being. I'm just shocked he played the Rouser because he has to not lose. So there's a lot of imbalances here. B5, E5, B. Like, what are we doing here? Both knights are hit. Both guys are ignoring their knights. That was a terrible arrow. Look at it. Like, what is happening? Bishop comes back to H4. And this is normally what happens in the classical Sicilian. No joke. Like, you just have this lump. This lump just kind of sits in front of your king. King to B1 is always a useful move in these positions. Black lines up the attack. The bishop comes back to F2. And white sort of waits. Like, there's moments that white can kind of poke and prod at the structure here. It's very likely for black to play like this. I mean, but since white controls the center, white is not really worried about that. As you can see with the move knight d4, bishop f6, and taking a pawn on a6. Basically, Pankratov needs to take a risk. So he takes on a6. He allows rook takes g2. We have a total chaos. I mean, white has passed A and B pawns. Literally, no one stands in front. No other pawns stand in front of them. After rook g2, rook g1, rook back to g6, and bishop back to c4, white is setting up the cannons, but black is setting up the cannons all the same. I mean, like, maybe back row just wanted to knock the guy out 2-0. So we'll see if that can happen. Rook to g3. Knight back to e7, bishop b3, queen b4. You want a queen trade? No. Okay. Queen back to e2. I'm either lining up something here or I'm heading this way. I'm heading to h5. Okay. Oh, look, I'm heading to h5. How did Gotham know? And if anyone's confused why the rooks are having a staring contest for like the last, I don't know, like nearly 10 moves, that's because neither one wants to help the opponent's structure. That would help the enemy, right? So the rooks are just staring at each other. How long will they keep staring at each other? Okay, until black allows knight e5. And now if takes, oh, takes, let's draw the arrow correctly. If this were to happen, looks like black has simply won a pawn, but there's just a fork. Like, just a clean fork. You know, it went through the dishwasher cycle. And I mean, like, if you get this position, like, this, queen h4 hits the knight and there's going to d8. I mean, it's bad news. So out of nowhere, knight e5 comes and black is forced to sacrifice. Now, black has like a little armada of pawns here. A little spaceship of pawns, a very compact position. Everything is like close together. But Pankratov's on the way with the h-pawn. I mean, you will not break through a bishop guarded by 2 pawns. It's just not going to happen. Because he also gave away all his queenside pawns. You need the pawns to attack, right? And white just, you know, sets everything up on the king side. Black opens up, but bishop c5 comes along. H-file. And what we need to accomplish here is the triple stack. If we can succeed in at least the double stack, but definitely the triple stack, that is exactly how we're going to win this game. All right, now we're double stacking down the middle, trying to win a center pawn, and we have a trade of pieces. Make sure everything's stable. Somebody has to go and protect. And we end the game not with the double stack, but sorry, not with the triple stack, but with the double stack. Queen h7 is simply unavoidable unless you want to give away a rook and play a position where you are down 2 rooks and a pawn for a knight, which is an 8-point material advantage. Back row had no interest in doing any of that and decided to just resign. And Pavel Pankratov has tied this match. These two have just beaten the faces off of each other in their first 2 games. This will also be decided tomorrow in the tiebreaks. Not the same way as Wojtaszek versus Carlsen, as these two had 2 decisive games, but you know. Now, let's take a look at the top matchup between Goryachkina and Stefanova. This is the women's side. Stefanova yesterday won with the white pieces. So Goryachkina is looking to answer to stave off elimination. We have a6, a Shebanenko, a6 Slav defense. Black many lines likes to play b5, but also can mix in just flexible stuff, put the bishop on b4. White plays e3, which is a super solid line against a6, like the solidest line that you can play. And then the players just develop, and as you see, exactly, this bishop might take this knight. Don't hold your breath. There's also lines where the bishop stands here and just ends up coming back. And that is exactly what happened. Basically, black has made white move the bishop to d2 instead of here. Actually, white would like the bishop there to fight on this diagonal when the center opens up. But white says, to hell with that. Let's finish our development and let's play e4 anyway. I mean, we might as well, right? It's better than taking. It's better than doing anything. Doesn't really matter which way black takes. Black took on c4, but if black had taken on e4, for example, this transformation of the position is really good for white. This is all very soft and weak. You don't even need to move your bishop. Like, oh, but the bishop pair. Yeah, but time. Time is important. c5. Take. Bishop comes back. Like, you don't need to go here. It's all about time. And here, white is much, much better. White also has rook e4 with this idea to go like this. Yeah, well, I mean, white is very, very happy in this position and has a nice space advantage. Black ends up taking on c4 and going for e5. And you'll remember that Magnus had a 3-pawn structure like this. Well, I don't believe that Goryachkina saw their position, but she ends up going for a very similar thing. And yeah, this space advantage really cannot be understated. It is massive. And soon after this trade, there is this nice wedge that occurs with e5 and f4. The diagonal is controlled. This bishop is very much controlled on its two most active squares, which makes it really difficult to develop. So black tries to take a little space on the queen side. White focuses on this side of the board, and we have a big transformation. And probably black expected queen c4, at which point you can win time on the queen and then finish your development. But maybe what black did not expect is this move when it's like not so clear what black's next move is. You don't need to take weak pawns. You need to play the best move in the position. The best move in this position is to utilize your majority in the center and on the king side and create an attack. Create an attack like this. Find a target. Bang, bang, bang. You don't need to make those noises out loud when you're creating an attack, but you can if you want, if it helps you focus. That would be very bad. This wedge is super annoying, and the fact that the bishop cannot come out is really bad for black, and this bishop will always be a target if it even makes it to e6. So the rest of this game is quite literally Alexandra Goryachkina beating Stefanova as if she owes her money. I mean, every move comes with force. Like, you can, you know, it's like, you know, you ever see the cameras at a boxing ring or a mixed martial arts event? You can hear the punches. That's kind of like what's going on in this game. I mean, Goryachkina was like, I mean, you took someone I love. Please tell me their location. I mean, she's still being polite about it. I mean, and here there is a very nice, subtle final finishing touch. Like, black is cocooning. I call this cocoon defense. Yeah, you can pry the fingers off the, like, you can overload that g7 pawn. You want to go take, and you want someone to take this. So play the very calm move, queen c1. Because take, queen h6 is mate. And it's really difficult to defend, so queen c7 gets played. That doesn't stop anything. Because if pawn takes and queen h6 and queen h7, there's this, and I mean, I can play basically any move and probably win the game. But pushing and, I mean, queen f8, f6, like, look at this. Look at, like, for example, look at this. Like, what are we doing? Like, not right away. Maybe not right away, but take and play like f6. I mean, oh, queen h6, f6, oh, f7, like, oh. So black sacks the queen. Goryachkina comes back, and yeah, it was not pretty. And she sacks the queen for style points at the end, and she wins. Yeah, violent game. And, you know, a lot of this has to do with having a big center. And really, it's instructive, like how you can use a central pawn wedge to take space away from your opponent, block off their piece's path, and then create this nice little rook transfer, you know, and not taking back because your queen's just going to be a target. Like, this is stuff you need to think about. Time is everything in chess, right? So you go here, black doesn't have an easy move. If black plays this, then there's f5. And that actually did happen later in the game, the move f5, although without the bishop. So violent game from Goryachkina. She wins a very nice one. Next game I'd like to show you, Vasif Durarbayli versus Nodirbek Abdusaturov. Yesterday, Vasif won with the black pieces. Vasif needs to not lose with black. Sorry, Vasif needs to not lose with white. Nodirbek needs to win with black. So naturally, when you want to win with black, like back row did, why does the guy who needs to win with black play e5, and the guy who needs to not lose and not win, just make a draw, play c5? I don't get it. But we have a Philidor defense with d6, pretty rare stuff, and usually d4, knight d7 is the way to go nowadays. Knight f6 and Philidor defense is a little bit passive, but, you know, very massive. And, like, you can, there's a lot of different branches and variations and ideas, and it's really interesting variation. But he takes. And this is called the exchange variation. Black just kind of plays moves. Literally. Like, that's just what black is doing. Black is, long castle trading. Opposite side castling. White is always a little bit better. H4, H5, F3, G4, H4, H5, G5. Ba 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 ba. Destroy the opponent. And, I think Vasif here plays a move he would never play under normal circumstances. I don't think E5 is a bad move. I just think he thought, takes, bishop d6, like, I'll go here, we'll trade, where I will never be worse, we'll have a totally symmetrical pawn structure and minor piece duo. I can't lose this game. The best move is unquestionably not E5. It's to play F3, G4. Like, it's to create an attack. So probably Nodirbek, exactly like what back row did. Opposite side castling, I gotta win the game, so I'm happy with this position, even if the computer considers it slightly better for white. But you see, in this game, what ended up happening is this, and we got a totally symmetrical position, except the minor piece pair is not the same. One guy has the bishop pair on a totally otherwise symmetrical board, which means black is better. That's what it means. The bishop pair on a totally symmetrical structure means that black is playing this position for an advantage, bishop e5. The way you convert a bishop pair into something is like, for example, if queen a4 were to be played, you would need to take this. Like, that is where your advantage now lies, because this is a horrible structure. Awful. You can just play moves like rook d8, queen f6 in the future, and just immediately start picking this apart because it's so passive and white has no development. So queen c5, and that is exactly what happens. Like, a few moves later, we get this. And Vasif basically said, I can't lose this. We both have 2 rooks and bishop and 6 pawns. How can I possibly lose this? Yes, I have some weaknesses, but I will trade a rook. The more pieces you trade here, for example, like, you have to understand what you need to trade in positions like this. If, for instance, what happened in the game? Like, okay, king b2 happened in the game, but let's say, rook d5 and like this, and then like this, and this happened, okay? And you traded all the rooks. This is significantly more holdable for white. And even still, it's probably going to be like a nightmare, and you might still lose because of how many weaknesses you have. But if black doesn't play this the right way and allows you to put pawns on dark squares and brings the king very actively into the center, black is going to have to really work hard. But that's exactly what happens in the game. Like, if you watch the game, black avoids the rook trade. Black understands that by having 1 rook trade, your winning chances remain fine. 2 rook trades, not so much, and 0 rook trades, as we are seeing, I'm just going to keep making your pieces dance. I'm going to put my bishop on c6. At some point, I'm going to bring my king. Here it comes. You want a bishop trade? No, I don't want a bishop trade. Bishop trade might help you with your structure, or rook trade might help you with your structure. Maybe not, but the more we trade, the better it's going to get. Nodirbek waited so long as he maneuvered around and tried to isolate Vasif's weaknesses. Look at what Vasif did to his own pieces. Like, what? Now 1 pawn falls, and, he tries to create some back rank counterplay, but he can't. His structure is completely terrible, and black has infiltrated. Now, computer gives some wild defensive, resources here, trying to claim, black is not totally miserable. White is not totally miserable. It looks pretty miserable, though. Bishop a4 is coming back, and where is black's breakthrough? How's black going to do this? Okay, h5. That's where you're going to do it. I mean, it seems like white has gotten a more or less defensive setup and can try to avoid you moving anywhere, but no, h5, and here it comes, okay? Rook f4 hits c4. Rook comes back to d3. Nice little tactical defense. If takes, takes. That is a massive improvement to the structure for white, so we're not going to do that. h4, just let me take a little bit of space. Here comes my king. My rook is infiltrating on the back rank. You're dancing around. I'm going to bring that rook back to defend. Here comes my king. Look at that. Look at what he did. h5, h4 to bring in the king by virtue of h6. This man, Nodirbek, activated the rooks and the bishop and is now coming in with king to f4, and that's going to be good for mate. Rook e3 is mate. For example, rook b8, rook e3 is mate. And for that reason, Vasif resigned. Here's what I'm going to say about this game. Vasif lost it. Nodirbek won. But this is one of those games you look at, this was not a good strat from Vasif. It was a great strat from Nodrbek, admittedly, playing the Philidor, confusing his opponent on which way to go in the position. And Vasif, who was cool, calm, and collected, nice and dominant, you know, broad shoulders, nice beard, sitting there like, I'm up 1-0, you know, I got the white pieces. Should I go for the attack and maybe knock him out 2-zip? Let's trade. And it was all downhill from there. Very mature approach from Nodrbek, deservedly knocking out Anish Giri, and he forces a tiebreak on demand by winning with the black pieces, which takes us to our final game of the day. This one would seem Maxime Vachilik. I almost said vaccine. Maxime Vaccine. I don't even know, man. I spent like 6 hours walking today, looking at different apartments. I'm tired, but, you know, recaps must go on. Versus Pragnananda Ramesh Babu. They drew their first game, and Prague plays the Sicilian against MVL, and he plays the 2 or 4 knights, however you want to call this, Sicilian defense. 2 because it's 2 for black, but also 4 if you count these. And here the players play something wild. This is actually a main line. Takes, e5, here, and you're trying to play c4 and jump this knight into d6. So black plays queen c7, defending d6, and also attacking this. White defends the center pawn. Black plays queen b6. So now that you've baited this pawn up, the e3 square is very weak. You would like to go there. So white says, come get some. You want to come here? Come on in. This is actually a move, and queen d3 gets played here, and there's some lines where knight takes f1 is possible. But the thing about playing like this is that you've just traded off your most active piece. You still have a gaping weakness on d6 that's really ugly, and that's just not going to work very well. King e2 is a move, and here, after bishop to a6, pinning the pawn to the king, what often will happen is that this king will go to f3. And this is theory. This is legitimately theory. I am not joking. I am not trolling you. This has been played many times, and it is absolutely insane. In this game, Prague just plays this right away, so we get a position where the king just kind of vibes on e2 for a while, trades happen, and you wouldn't believe it, but this position after 15 moves by both players has been reached hundreds of times. And here, I don't remember the theoretical move. It's either rook e1 or rook g1. Rook e1 because maybe you will walk the king over to c1, castling by hand, as if you castle long, but you move the king. Rook g1 because against the move c5, you might be able to get away with g4, g5, and just not right away, because black will play knight to e4, hitting your queen, but that's sort of the idea. MVL plays king d1. This is a move that has been played, but is not very popular. It also is very simple. You want to move your bishop. That's it. You just don't really care about moving the rook to the center. Maybe you'll move the king over here. But like the fact that this is even a move and it has been played and you can play this move with a straight face in the middle of the game like this, dumb. All dumb. Stupid. Dumb. Anyway, black plays c5. That pawn can be taken with 2 pieces. So the queen takes it. The rook is going to come to c8. d5 is possible. The bishop is opened up. That's black's entire point here. This position, all the way until this move had been played before. In that game, black played queen e7. That game ultimately ended in a draw. It was a correspondence game, which means like they use engines and it's allowed and you're allowed to, unless it was like before engines time. But it's like you have time to send in moves. But Prague plays queen c7, and now the players are on their own completely. MVL plays the move b3. That is not the world's most complicated move. He defends the center, and he wants to play king b2. Since you know the king is going to go there, it is very natural for you to either want to blow up the center or play a5, a4. But let's just pause for a moment and evaluate the position from how we know to evaluate positions. So who's better here and why? Click Stockfish. Levy, it's plus 0.45 after the moves. a5, rook d1, e5, attacking the queen, takes, and this queen can go here, and you can go for this sort of a position. Yeah, but yeah, how do you actually evaluate the position for real? White has a much better structure, 3-3 versus black's isolated 2 pawns in the center and the weakness on a5. 3-on-1 potentially over here in the endgame. The bishop pair, more central space. This king is kind of a liability, kind of, but what happens when you just put it on b2? Like, who's going to attack the king? Well, Prague is trying, right? And by the way, that kind of does happen. Some of those things with a5. No trade, and just king b2. And basically, MVL's like, dude, are you really going to take on g2? Like, you've said all this. Are you really going to take this pawn? You're really going to do this to yourself? Like, what? How are you going to deal with the g-file, bro? Prague's like, yeah, I'm good. Let's play this flashy knight d5 move. That's a cool move. That is a very cool move, looking to open the c file and get down to c2. He also could have played a5, a4, super natural as well. What I expect here is just a queen trade, like getting an endgame like this where you have the 3-on-1 dominant for white. This one queen trade sends the game from borderline equal, like plus 0.5, sure, white is slightly better, to plus 3. Just one queen trade. Fair terms, plus 3 for white because you have such a dominant pawn advantage. So knight goes to d5, takes rook c8. We get an aggressive, and MVL plays a shocking move here. He gives the queen away. He gives away the queen on c5. Plays rook c1, looks at his opponent and goes, "Oh no, my queen." That's not actually how he talks, but it's my attempt at doing a French accent. I don't actually know his voice that well. He says, "Oh no, my queen." Pragg says, "Yeah, but straight up, like you're actually your queen though." So the balance of material is rook, bishop, pawn for queen. 5 plus 3 plus 1 is 9. 9 is 9. Okay, 9 is 9. Great. Outstanding. Wonderful. h6. That move is played to cover something ever coming to g5 and also making sure you have no back rank weaknesses. The problem is it's slow. Trading another rook might have been the way to go, but this is very difficult to do for black because you leave yourself with a queen and a bishop. You need to be damn sure they're going to be doing something. If you don't trade rooks, you can take the pawn, but like, that's what the engine wants. But again, it should shut up and go outside. So he goes here, MVL plays this move, rook c7's on the way, bishop c4 is on the way, rook f1, rook f7 to team up with that rook might be on the way, we might have problems. Now he decides to take, but the problem is the rooks are too strong. He comes in with counterplay with queen e4, we have check, king goes to the corner, and MVL for the second time ignores the threat completely. Ignore the threat to his queen, queen takes e3, I would just make a queen. I cannot just make a queen, is what I meant to say. Because you would just do this. If that, you would go rook c8. Trying to force your way to having a queen. And if king h7 then takes, and then d8, and you win. And that's what's up. That's exactly what happened. Well, MVL could have just taken the rook, or make a queen. He made the queen. And Pragg, sadly, his run in the World Cup came to an end. And he lost. And he was knocked out. And, I mean, I really did want to just commend this game because it was super wild. It was just an absolutely insane game. And MVL just sacrificed a queen for a strategically dominant position. Like, fascinating. Super creative play that Pragg was unable to respond to. So, Pragg is an excellent player, and there will be obviously many more successes in his career in the future, but there's levels to this. And on that note, we will take a look at what we look like. Carlsen Wojtaszek headed to a playoff. So is Dubov, Yesipenko. The next matchup, Kacper Piorun knocked out Sindarov, the gentleman who defeated Corey and Firouzja. Piorun is one of the first quarterfinalists. Round of 8. Quarterfinals. Korobov Grishuk, playoff. Duda knocked out Puya Idani from Iran. Duda has won every matchup in Classical. Look at this. Duda won this in Classical, this in Classical, and this in Classical. Look at him. Look at Duda go. Vidit knocked out Jeffrey. He's another one of the first quarterfinalists. Feraseyev 2-0. 1-1. Tabatabai, the last remaining player from Iran. And Martirosyan's amazing run at the World Cup continues as he just knocked out Ante Birkic. He is on fire. He is really, really doing well. And on the women's side, we have... Wait a minute. What do we have? We have one playoff, another playoff, another playoff. We have Anna Muschuk knocking out Elizabeth Petz to await the winner of Shuvalova Zanidze. We have Kostyuk knocking out the other Muschuk. Oh, no. She's a quarterfinalist or semifinalist? Quarterfinalist. No. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Let's just end the recap here. I'm tired, and I hope you enjoyed, and you're great, and I will see you all tomorrow.